Hey, everybody. Hello, hello, hello. Hope you are having a fantastic day wherever you are at. If you're watching this in recording, hope you are having a fantastic day, night, morning, afternoon, evening. I am David Fisher, coming back at you with another tip, another tool, another way that you can be a more effective sales Sherpa for your prospects and clients, how you can be a more effective guide, a trusted resource for the people that you are working with, especially because, as my guest and I were just discussing about before we jumped on live, it's a pretty whack time right now. There's a lot of craziness. And I'm so excited to be joined today by Janet Lee. Janet, how are you?
Doing okay, D-Fish, hanging in there. As you said, whack times for sure, but, doing the best that I can. How about you?
That's, you know what? Doing the best that I can. And I think that, as I tell people, when you're asked, at least here in 2020, how you're doing, there's like an asterisk to that question, which is assuming the baseline of insanity that we're all dealing with. How are you doing in relation to that, right?
Yeah.
And that is, by the way, a fantastic lead-in for our topic today. And I was really excited to be able to have you on because this whole month we've been looking at ways to more effectively build relationships with our prospects, with our clients, our partners, colleagues, and we were looking at online ways and offline ways. But really, no matter what the medium, it's really about the relationship. And I wanted to have you on because you've always been such a great advocate for that relational part of the business. And so kind of what I wanted to dive into today is, how do you practically do that, right? Because I think a lot of times relationships or empathy, these are kind of words we kind of just throw around and assume people know how to make them happen. So let's talk about, how do we make that happen on a day-to-day basis? So I'm going to throw a really general question out to you. What are some of the best ways you think that, not only during these whack times, but really just always, what are some of the best ways that people can go about making sure they're building relationships with people?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me on today. I'm thrilled to be here and so honored that you asked me to be on. As you said, this is a really uncertain time for everyone. And one of the words that you mentioned was empathy, which is a word that I use ad nauseum with my team. I think it's really important.
It can't be used too much.
It really can't. It cannot be overused at this point, but really just trying to put yourself in the shoes of the people around you and the people that you serve. The other word that I'm constantly using is reimagining, right? We're faced with this new situation, and how do we adapt? How do we emerge from this better, stronger, more innovative than we were before? Because we're all having to rethink the way that we do things. I think where those two things converge is communication. I know it sounds so basic, but really that is the key to all relationships, right?
Right.
So in thinking about relationships and how that all comes together, I do have some tips that I'd like to pass along. But before I dive into that, Vanguard back in April, they did a study and they said that as much as 40% of value that clients perceive from their relationships with their FAs is derived from emotional elements. So things things such as trust and personal connection, right? So how do we achieve that during this time where we're having to rethink, reimagine, and also show empathy? The first is as simple and basic as a phone call, right? How are you doing? Just checking in on you. Is everything okay? This seems so simple, and at the same time, it's so powerful. People just need to feel like they're connected and to have someone say, hey, I'm thinking about you. Is everything okay? Is there anything that I can do for you? And I think that that has a ton of mileage.
I love that.
My next thought is that, we can just do small, simple things, thoughtful gestures during this time. Something that my team has done is that we've done COVID gift packs. And what does that look like, right? So that can be something as simple as a $15 Netflix gift card that you send out to a client and say, hey, I'm thinking about you. We're all stuck indoors. But here's something that you can do to spend some quality time with your family. Rent
Here's
a
a
movie.
couple movies on me.
Exactly.
Right.
Yes, and whether you're binge watching Ozark or Glow or whatever the many offerings are on
Right.
Netflix, it is just that simple gesture. I'm thinking about you. I'm thinking about your family. And this is a way that you can, during this time, spend a little bit more time with your family and hopefully build some conversation and quality around that time. We're all having to do reviews. I think the one thing that the pandemic has really just shine a light on is the need for reassurance, right? You're doing
Right.
okay. You're on track. We have a plan. And how do we make sure that you stick to that plan? And part of that is whether it's a monthly, a quarterly, an annual review. We're no longer able to meet at a Starbucks and have a coffee together. But you know what? We can do that virtually. So
For
what does
sure.
that look like? Let's do a Zoom call, and I'm going to send you over a Starbucks gift card. Let's have coffee together, and let's do a portfolio review. Let's answer any questions that you might have. Let me give you my take on what's going on, and let me help you feel a little bit more comfortable with our plan and kind of the bigger plan around us, right?
Right. Well, and so I hear two different parts of or types of communication from what you've just said, and I think it's important to highlight both of them.
Yeah.
One is kind of that professional level communication, meaning a review is a great example. You'd have that no matter what, and it is kind of part and parcel of your role as an advisor. But there's a separate communication that I think is often the one that gets missed and is being highlighted right now. I think it's always a good idea, but that, how are you doing? No, I'm calling because I just want to check in with you. I know you got a 3-year-old and a 5-year-old at home. Just, how are things? And kind of doing it without that ulterior motive. Because I actually have seen a lot of, not just financial advisors, but just salespeople, professionals in general, try to always conflate those two and be like, well, I'm going to do, how you doing? And then I'm going to try to sell you something.
Right.
And that kind of brings up the defenses and people don't trust you as much versus they can know that, oh, Janet called me and, it might be a business thing, but, we have a human connection as well. So I'll talk to her. So it's almost like you need to focus on both of those sometimes separately. Is that right?
I would 100% agree with you. I think that in order to build that trust, obviously you have to have the professional piece. That is the reason why they're working with you. But to really deepen that relationship and to make you a little bit more referable, right? You've got to go deeper, right? That relationship has to be more than just about the numbers. And, just citing that Vanguard study, it's about that emotional connection. And that emotional connection, sure, it can help because you're trusted and they come to you with some of their most personal needs. But beyond that, when they can call you friend, I think that just takes the relationship to the next level.
I love that. And, our friends definitely said the professional, but they also just care about you as a person.
Yeah.
And you can't, and you can't really short circuit that, or rather there's no hack to that, right? Like, oh, here's the 3 life hacks to make somebody be your friend instantaneously.
Yeah. You can't phone it
doesn't work.
No, in this case, you should phone it in.
Right. Well, and it also leads me to realize, and of course, it's a little too late for unfortunately many people, but relationship building takes time. And one thing that I've definitely seen over the course of, the whole pandemic is both, from my perspective and also just viewing how other people are doing it, when you've invested up front, sometimes for years into the relationship, when there are challenging times like there are right now, you have that social capital built up, right? And I think that there's a great reminder to all of us as we reimagine. It's not just I got to reimagine, kind of how I'm going to do business, but also, hey, maybe I'm going to put that relationship aspect a little more front and center, be a little more intentional with it long term, right?
Absolutely. I 100% agree with you. I think that connection, you cannot minimize how important that is. Most of us are isolated to our homes. Some of us live by ourselves. So to have someone intentionally reach out to you and just ask how you're doing, it makes a ton of difference. And again, deepens that relationship.
Yeah, it just makes it easy. I mean, I even think, we're now, depending on where you're at, 6+ months into some sort of social distancing or self-isolation. And, I'm here in the Chicago area, and, I've gotten a lot of time with my 15-month-old now, and my wife and the nanny, but that's kind of it, so just having somebody else to talk to in the day, always a good thing, kind of breaking it up a little bit.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more.
Is there anything else kind of like, so if we think kind of practical steps, like right now, it sounds one is maybe even just putting some time into your calendar, but also maybe just having a reminder or a note, call these 3 people, call these 5 people, prospects or clients or just colleagues and partners, and just, send an email. Hey, can we get together for a 30-minute call? So there's like that practical step. Or I love the idea of here's the Starbucks gift card if we're going to have a meeting, and a Zoom call for reviews, or even just here's a Netflix gift card, go watch some TV on me. Is there anything else kind of like that you'd suggest on a practical level that people can, this week do to build better empathetic relationships?
Absolutely. I think having some sort of a weekly newsletter is always a good idea.
Love that.
Yeah. So whether it's something that's original content, you've put it together yourself, or you're curating the content, putting together articles that are topical at the moment. I think both have audiences. And if you spend a little bit of time thinking about what's important to me, chances are you're going to put together a pretty good newsletter, right? So whether it's college planning, do annuities make sense? State of the market. I mean, we saw a ton of volatility back in March.
Right.
And then since then, things have basically skyrocketed. So what is the feeling out there? What are the things that are important? What are the things that people are thinking about during this time, and also as we come out of this time? So having that weekly newsletter, it seems like a big investment, but I think it has a ton of mileage.
I love that idea, especially because, you talk about volatility in the market, and then it's gone up, and some people are like, wait, how do we have huge unemployment, but the market's going up? And college is another great example. What happens if college is virtual for another year? And what does that do to the entire collegiate system? And so, not that you have to have answers to any of these, but I call it, being the sales Sherpa, it's being present. I love that idea of being present in their inbox with, hey, here's an article that you could read. Here's some more information. Here's an insight. So that maybe you're not going to have that review with them for a year, but it's not like you just showed up and you're like, hey, we got to do a review. It's like you've been kind of drip feeding them this information to help them out.
Right. And as you mentioned,
Dave, how much better. I love that.
You don't have to be the expert. My final kind of practical tip is, as financial advisors, we have access to some of the greatest minds in financial services through our vendor relationships and otherwise. And so to have some sort of a weekly or a monthly WebEx where you pick a topic, and it could just be state of the economy, and you ask one of your mutual fund wholesalers, hey, can you grab your portfolio manager and jump on a call with me with my clients, talk about what you guys are thinking, what you're feeling, what the next moves are, that type of thing. I think that, again, you don't have to be the expert, but you've got this entire arsenal of access to some of the greatest minds in financial services.
That's such a great idea. And I almost think of the idea of creating like a weekly podcast or a weekly video interview, but not to, there's a way too many podcasts already. Please don't, I need people to listen to my podcast. So don't start another one. But an internal podcast. So like literally, if you're like, I'm going to record 15 minutes, I love this idea with a wholesaler, with a vendor, somebody who's got some expertise, and ask them a few quick questions that are going to be relevant to my customers. And again, you do that once a week. That's a way of creating great shared content, collaborating with your vendors, with all of the resources you have.
Right.
And it doesn't have to be big. I can think of, 15 minutes. That's why we're doing these in 15 minutes or so. That's kind of the time frame that people have, right?
Yep. The attention span.
Yeah. Well, because now we have to go worry about all the other whack things that are happening in our lives, like keeping the child out of, the kitchen cabinets one more time. This has been great. And speaking of time, we're kind of right up at the limit here, but this has been fantastic. I so appreciate you coming on. By the way, everybody, we are doing these every weekday, Monday through Thursday during October, right at noon Central. They're also all available on our YouTube channel. We take all the recordings. So even Janet, your recording will be here. You can share it with everybody. And in a couple sessions, we're going to be having Joey Davenport on from Hoopus Performance Network, talking all about trust and building trust again. So that's some word that came out a lot today in our call. If you want to follow up with Janet, she is awesome. Just reach out to her right here on LinkedIn. If you have any questions for me or any ways that I can be of service, please don't hesitate to reach out. And we'll talk to everybody tomorrow at noon. Bye, everybody. And bye, Janet. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Big Fish. Have a good day.
Bye.
Bye-bye.